Good afternoon, bonjour à tous. So I will ask 4 colleagues to make brief statements about the parallel sessions we had, and I'm not sure if they are ready to come up. I have 4 names, so I will just call on them and see if they appear. They're asked to summarize the parallel session in 1 or 2 minutes, and then I will take a few minutes, 5 or so, to share some impressions of the day, just to wrap up things. So could I ask Amal Amin Ibrahim Shendi Nada, Bernardo Urbani, Shaheen Motala Timol, and Mahesh Kumar to come forward? Yeah. So are they in the room? Otherwise I will start with the other part and we can maybe find them. Yeah, please come up. Okay. So I just thought that it might be a good idea to just start with you briefly. Yeah. You need a microphone. Let me do one thing before you start. Just get this. So just the one thing I thought I would do before I ask my colleagues to report back is just to remind you of the key tasks that was set for us for this conference, so that's for both days. The goal of this conference is to enable critical reflection and interdisciplinary dialogue, to develop the science policy interface for the SDGs, and to work on strategies to improve evidence-informed advice. And I believe we can claim that we have already made very good progress on all these points, and we have another day to go. So with this, I would like to give the word to Amal, please, to make some remarks.
Hello. Several points and subjects were raised in the session of well-being in digital age. First point was about the information and communication technology, where the speaker made a comprehensive description that ICT is like nervous system, and AI, artificial intelligence, as a brain, and the world was primitive without technology. But we overall as humans, and we have to behave as humans as well, and we have to be concerned in empowerment the people more than to be concerned in the technology. The second point also, that safe technologies can improve the lives of those who have the skills to use them. But there are 3 main risks as digital divide, lack of digital literacy, digital insecurity. However, it was found that evidence in certain dimensions is still debated and scattered, where more evidence and more inclusion of ICT variables in surveys are needed. The third point about some highlights on the fact that social media, search, and data extraction technologies are not only changing the structure and the dynamics of social networks, but are also changing how controllable these systems are. Also, open access is an element from well-being, and data should be accessible and moreover open license software. The fourth point, with respect to indigenous people and indigenous knowledge and data, it was mentioned that about 55% of countries with indigenous people do not identify them in their national statistics. But there must be ethical use of data to enhance the well-being of the people, language, culture. The fifth point, individual right may include privacy rights, risks, benefits in relation to needed data. Generally, in conclusion, quality of life is relative and we cannot measure everything, but we can take advantage of science, but we have to consider that we are humans and we should be responsible for next generations.
Thank you, Mark. And could I ask you to just tell us your affiliation, please?
I am professor at National Research Center in Egypt, and I am founder of Women in Science Without Borders movement.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bernardo Urbani, and also please state your affiliation. I think Bernardo is...
Hi, thank you for the invitation. My name is Bernardo Urbani. I am a researcher at the Venezuelan Institute for Scientific Research, and I was commissioned to report on the session, the role of arts, humanities, interpretative social science in advancing knowledge advice for the SDGs. Well, I am pleased to be here because as an anthropologist, I am, that there was a session on social science advice, which normally are not taken into account in this kind of events, and to be honest, most of the time I actually excluded. No? So this was not the case, and this is fantastic, and it was great to be there. So let me highlight some of the key points from that session. The first one I would like to point out is the relevance of considering the social context in knowledge advice. And please notice that I use the word knowledge advice rather than science advice. The other one is understanding the role of diversity in reaching the SDGs. Also, it was pointed out that it's relevant to searching for a comparative approach while advising. And very important also was the necessity of being reflective in, let's say, navigating between social and so-called hard science. Let me take a couple of keywords that are taken from the slides. One is, I like them, I find they are fundamental. One is consensus, and the other is co-production of science. So the discussions with the audience, which actually the audience was more like a respondents of the presenters, and was very nice, was a very fluent conversation actually. The audience was looking for an integrative approach in science advising, knowledge advising, by embracing the role of values in the past for accomplish the Sustainable Development Goals. To finish, as a sort of epilogue, I would like to raise a red flag mark, because even the session was on the role of art, humanities, and social science. Actually, neither humanities and arts were taken into account properly. I mean, we barely talk about that. And I don't want to say that as a critic, but I would like to observe that as a future realm of reflections. No? So taking art and humanity actually as a part of knowledge advice. To finish, I would like to thank the Global Young Academy, where I am a member, and INGSA for supporting my participation in this conference.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay.
Shaheen Motalo Timol, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Shaheen, and so I'm from Mauritius. I'm a quality assurance practitioner in higher education from the Tertiary Education Commission. So the session I'm reporting on is the one which is concerned with building trust between evidence brokers and multiple communities. So trust and also integrity, transparency of evidence, personal relationship building with multiple communities is a gradual process and should be continuously maintained, as this trust can be easily broken down. And the role of evidence brokers, who are often themselves scientists, is crucial when we talk about the science policy interface between two worlds that do not naturally fit into together, and also moving at different spaces. And giving advice and making decisions are two different and separate aspects of science policy. So scientists put forward the evidence-based advice, but it is not their role to make the policy decision. So in some cases, scientists should advise less and provide options instead. So depending on context, on need, on values and expectations. Both scientists and policymakers serve public interest. Therefore, engaging in policymaking also requires scientists to know how to be humble, to be able to listen, and to hear the perspective of different communities, especially in the aftermath of disasters, when trust in science decreases. So advise less and also do not raise expectation, as science is challenging and has limitation, and this has to be acknowledged to create trust. And lastly, communication is key, and media can play an important role to disseminate science and science policy. It is therefore important to convey the right messages in the right languages, but also to have different messages from different perspectives to address one issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mahesh Kumar, please.
I am Mahesh Kumar. I am Assistant Professor at Indian Institute of Technology and Chair of Indian National Young Academy. I am going to report the session dealing with disaster. What should be the role of science advice during, before, and after the crisis? So it is important to share the knowledge, share the information at the right time at the international level. So basically, we can get the information, we can get the help at the international level here. As well as data analysis and mapping are also essential. Speakers have also discussed the impact of climate change on agriculture and health, because health is the most important here, and basically how to deal with the supply, how should be the distribution healthcare. So basically some models should be there. So distribution in the affected area should be more. This one, medicine, basically the doctors here. Also here, more important is there, basically the trust between private and public sector here. Some mechanisms should be there. Both parties should work together, and also with the local people, because trust is very important here. We should also create some mechanism and basically for feedback between science and the operation here. From the operation also we get some feedback, and then accordingly we have to advise this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you would have time for one or two questions if anyone would either like to ask a question or comment on something noteworthy from these parallel sessions.
My name is Pearl Dijkstra. I'm one of the chief science advisors for the European Commission. I want to compliment the four of you for very nice wrap-ups of sessions. I was at some of the sessions that you wrapped up, and good job. I have a question for Bernardo Urbani. You explicitly said that you do not talk about science-based advice, but you talk about knowledge-based advice. Can you give me an example, or can you say why you do that? My hunch is that you're thinking of involving citizens, but maybe, okay, that is what you're thinking. But could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, I think that citizens' voice needs to be taken into account. Normally, the experts, quote, the experts are the ones that give the final advice, but I think more like a panel way of, sharing the community, the ideas to, for scientific knowledge ideas, rather than only what the experts say. I mean, it's important, but they also need to hear different voices, no? Not only a single voice. Yeah.
Any other question or comment? So thank you very much for very clear, very balanced summaries. I have a few slides on the other elements of today. We'll just take 5 or so minutes. So if you can stay if you like, or You wanna? So I decided to take just a few quotes down, a few impressions. Keep it short. From the introductory remarks, we had several. It was said, I believe by most speakers, that we need to bridge science and policy, we need to work with society. And I like that, oh, you don't have display. Do you know why it's dark? Maybe I've unplugged something, I hope not. But how can I get to? Oh. I can read it without. It's okay. We'll do without. So a sentence I particularly found noteworthy in the introductory remarks was that the integration of disciplines is inevitable. So this is a very strong statement. From Sir Peter's talk, there will be a lot to report. The thing I remembered most was this juxtaposition of the good, the sad, and the bad. The good being there is interest. The sad that few countries have solid ecosystems for scientific advice. And the bad that populism is on the rise together with fake news, and the ever-shortening policy cycle makes it actually harder to provide meaningful advice. Two quotes, brokerage is clearly needed, and knowledge can only be given meaning through interactions. In order for knowledge to have meanings, you need interaction. So these are the things I retained as the brief points. From the Right Honourable Helen Clark, she stated that we should raise aspirations for science advice. There is a moral panic that stands in the way. We must hear much more from science, less from ideology, and we must draw on all forms of knowledge, which I think is, I very much agree, is also a big challenge to actually get this implemented. She also stated that in the post-truth setting, science will be challenged. So we have to just continue to live in this reality. You know, we cannot just remember that experts enjoyed a higher status in the past and try to hope for better days without taking this seriously. And it's okay. I think I will manage. It's not a problem, but thank you very much. And a sense I particularly liked is for the Agenda 2030, she said, it is what it is, but the direction is right. And I think that comes when you're at the apex of a country, this realization that you cannot get the exact design of your list of priorities, but as long as the direction is right, something is moving in the right direction. A few comments on the panel on SDGs and the science policy interface. We must address the SDGs in the global south, and we must do it inclusively in the place. It requires integrative thinking because the SDGs are linked and also because they're complex. It requires capacity, resources, and political will. It's maybe obvious, but it actually requires that budgets are being allocated and that political will be secured. We must understand the opposition to science, so that's an echo from before. We must be able to measure success, but we also have to keep it simple, prioritize, be practical, be fast, and we have to do things differently. So this reminded me of a statement that is attributed to Einstein, I believe, and is probably correct, that we cannot solve the problems with the exact same thinking that led to them being caused in the first place. Second panel, socio-techno transformation and the global goals. Every science will go through industries before contributing to the SDGs. Industries play a role. The STI, science, technology, and innovation, is essential, but it cannot deliver anything on its own. Technology reach is global, but its acceptance is local. AI is the magic wand, we just heard that, I will repeat that, but Harry Potter had to go to school first for a while. Don't beta test on the most vulnerable. Leverage tech and human factors, bring human factors into the design for knowledge management systems, and I think they are becoming more and more relevant to achieve this packaging, filtration, synthesis that we need. And failing to take advantage of technologies may be the greatest risk. We said a lot of negative points also in the discussion about technology, and there are legitimate worries. But we also have to remember that it's a risk not to use opportunities, so that balancing has to happen. And then on the Vladimir Suchas just happened so briefly, so not long ago, and was such a rich talk. I don't want to say much, but I have, and I also run out of space here. But I want to maybe just give you these 4 points on evidence for policy 3.0. These are issues that I guess collectively we asked to think about. Where is the power? How can we deal with motivational reasoning? How do we deal with virtual tribalism? And to understand the geography of discontent. I have one slide on just tomorrow to give you a brief. So the conference starts at 8:30, not 8:31. Rémi Quirion will speak first, the Chief Scientist of Quebec. There will be a panel on science advice at multiple levels, from local to global. The Honorable Minister Eugene Mutimura, Minister of Education of the Republic of Rwanda, will speak. And there will be conclusions on the way forward by Sir Peter, with adjourning at 5:30 in the afternoon. So now it's my pleasure to talk about food. There will be a conference reception at the Belle Salle Roppongi Grand Conference Center. And I have to give the word to someone more competent to make sure you actually get there. So thank you for your attention.